All right. What's up, everybody? It's Michael with High IQ. I've got Chris Klontz here. We're excited to go over this mastermind today. We've got some pretty interesting market and economic updates that Chris is going to review, and then I'm going to jump into I think a fun little session just breaking down some numbers so that way we can talk through what it looks like and what the difference is between a $10,000 paycheck and a $100,000 paycheck as you're first getting started with online leads. So, Chris, thanks for jumping in here. I'm going to hand it off to you, brother, and let you go through this sweet economic update you put together.
Sounds good. So we're going to start off with bold law, which is what I like to do, kind of center our minds for what we're learning. And bold law for today, your business grows to the extent that you do. One of my favorite bold laws. And if you want your business to grow, focusing on a growth plan for yourself is absolutely the way to accomplish that. Without a plan for your growth, your business will be hindered by you not growing. And so a lot of people, especially with the down year, a down market, a significant reduction in total transactions, a lot of people are behind on their goals and really want to grow. And instead of focusing on growing your business specifically, if you focus on growing yourself, your business will grow behind you. And so that's where I wanted to go. I'm calling today's economic update Econ 201. This is not 101 level stuff anymore. We've had a couple of these, and you should be following a lot of the economic news. Most of you are, I know. And so I'm going to go a little bit deeper. If this goes over some of your heads, I apologize. But if you focus, I think that we can get through this and you will learn something today that you can take to your clients. And then I'm going to finish this presentation with some really good news for you that I think you'll be excited to hear. So we all have seen over the last couple of weeks, interest rates continuing to climb, and we hit a new high on Tuesday of this week, 7.88 as the average at bank rate. Mortgage News Daily had about the same. I think they were at 7.85 at Mortgage News Daily. We're hearing certain clients, certain conditions being over 8%, even 8.25%. And so these are continuing to hinder the growth of the market and buyers being successful in buying homes. So how do we get here? How did we get here to 7.88? We know inflation, we know the Fed, we know those things, but I want to show you another indicator that you can be tracking that's going to be the fastest way to understand the direction interest rates are going. And it's the 10-year US bond. So our US bond as of today is actually at 4.85. So it went up even a little bit more. It went down yesterday, back up today. The 10-year bond, this is the government bond, and this is primary issuance. So this is the government saying, come and buy bonds, and we will pay you 4.85% a year for the next 10 years on your investment. And then that bond will mature and you'll get your initial investment back. This is a way for the government to raise money and to reduce liquidity in the market. Which, as you know, during the COVID years, they injected all this stimulus money and they've been scooping it all back off the market. Tightening, quantitative tightening is what that's called. So bond yields are continuing to go up because less and less people are interested in buying them unless interest rates go up. This is a supply and demand thing. We're zooming out a little bit further, going back all the way to, this chart goes to the 2018. And you can see since the low in 2020, the 10-year Treasury note has gone up from 0.3 was the low that it hit in 2020 to 4.85 now. So 450 basis points since March 2020. It's just been on a tear straight up because people are wanting higher and higher returns in order to invest in government treasuries. You go back even further, and you can see we've got to get back to 2007 to see bond returns, bond yields in the same place that they are today. So we've got to take a significant look back, 15 plus years to see bond yields where they are today. We're going to go back even further. We're going to zoom out even further. Look at this. This goes all the way back to the 60s. 10-year bond yield. This is same number we're tracking. And you can see there's some lines and some bubbles on this chart. The bubbles kind of overview the peaks over the last 40 years or so. And then you can see this was like the early 80s when interest rates got up to, mortgage interest rates at 18%. And we all have heard about those. Most of you guys, I would say all of you guys were not in the business at that point. But Gary Keller likes to talk about what it was like to get into the business at 18% interest rate. Since the mid 80s, we have been on a very consistent and steady decline in bond yields as investors have been putting their money in other places and had protected returns in other places than government bonds. You can see on this chart, there's a couple of, this is where we get into economics 201. This is it. We're going to get a little more technical. The red line you see on the chart, that's the median average on this slow and steady decline. And then each of the bars, the gray bar and the green bar in both directions, represent one standard deviation away from that line. A standard deviation is just like a normal variation. And 2 standard deviations would be twice a normal variation, etc. We are currently 4 standard deviations above the average decline line that we've had. So we are in 4 standard deviations from a statistical standpoint is kind of uncharted territory for the technicals of the bond yields. So we are in it basically breaks the trend and we're in a new cycle of something. And so it's less predictable what happens from here from a technical standpoint. And this chart, I think, puts the bond yields into historical perspective, that there's a lot of room upwards that this could continue to go. And like every inch we go upwards causes additional strain in the economy. And we're feeling that. We're seeing it in the news. We're feeling it in the anxiety of the conversations we're having with our clients around this. So this supports that anxiety, that there is a lot of anxiety. Now, I want to talk about what this means and kind of the good news from it. So you've probably heard the term, and actually we've talked about it before on one of these calls, the yield inversion, the bond yield inversion. You've heard that. And under normal economic circumstances, the longer you lock your money away, the better return you get on that money. So if you're willing to give your money to someone for 10 years, you're going to get a better return than if you're only willing to give your money to someone for 3 months to invest. You're going to get less return in a short term. A yield inversion is when that flips and the short term produces a higher yield than the long term. And so we find ourselves in that exact scenario right now, that the shorter term you're willing to lock your money away into a treasury bond, the better yield you're getting. Now, historically, every time that this happens, every time there's a yield inversion, it is a precursor to recession in the economy. And recession, everyone thinks of recession as a bad thing. Recession is a normal part of financial cycles, and in fact, is a really corrective measure in a lot of different market activities, including real estate. And so a yield inversion as a precursor to that recession lets us know that we're like, it'll happen at some point. And we've had this conversation for a while, and most of you have probably been tracking some of these things for a while to know that we kind of been in the spot for almost a year, and we still have not realized this recession. But I want to point something out on this chart specifically. Back in Q2 of this year, we actually got to like negative 1.5% on this chart, 10-year minus 3-month yield. And since then, as the 10-year continues to go up, it makes this inversion less and less. So this chart shows just about 1% inversion. We're actually at like a 0.8% inversion now with how much movement the 10 years had over the last week. And so we're moving back towards zero. And this is the yield inversion is a precursor to recession. A return towards normal yield spreads is like an immediate precursor to recession. And so this shows that we're getting closer to recession every minute. In fact, based on this yield curve, you can see that we're at the highest probability of recession that we've seen in almost 40 years, or maybe just over 40 years. And we're at a place that only 3 times since the 1960s have we been. So as far as probability of recession, we're pretty much there. And I think that we all feel that, we all see that, we all expect it, based on what we're experiencing in the market and likely in our own bank accounts. Another precursor, trucking employment is falling off a cliff. This is just pure numbers, the total number of truck transportation employees. And you can see the recession bars are marked, with one exception, which was right there in like 2015. Every time that this thing dips significantly, you've got a recession that's followed immediately. And the steepness of that dip is also a big indicator. And so you can see that we're in a condition that should immediately precede a recession. Permanent job losses have accelerated up. And again, this chart goes back to 95. I'm going to show you another chart that actually goes back to 1945 and that has all the recessions marked on this chart. And you can see this is just unemployment rate and recession. That's all that's shown on this chart. And you can see what happens immediately preceding a recession. And I'll show you a couple of examples here. You get a bottom and then a slight correction, a bottom, a slight correction, bottom, a slight correction, over and over and over again. And so what do we find we've had here? We held at about 3.4% through most of the spring into the summer. We've been on an increase. We're at 3.8%. The numbers that came out today, they were good job numbers. I say good. It was stronger than anticipated job numbers that came out this morning, and yet we're still holding at 3.8%, which is up from the bottom that we had at 3.4%. So rapidly rising permanent job losses have accelerated. Back to the chart I was showing you. Another indicator that we're right on the doorsteps of recession. So if we know recession is coming, there's hardship in recession, but there's also interest rates 100% of the time come down in a recession. And I say 100% of the time because that's what's happened. 100% of the time, the Fed has lowered interest rates at the foundational bank level that then turns into lower interest rates everywhere. And I think the modern Fed has shown that they do it really quickly. Again, we've broken the trend on the modern Fed, and so we'll see what happens, but interest rates will come down, absolutely. Now, I said I was going to leave you with some good news. Interest rates coming down is good news, but that's not the good news. I want to leave you with some demographic good news for what is foundationally underneath the real estate industry more broadly that you have the opportunity to pursue in the coming years. This is a chart that shows home ownership rate by age. That lower gray line is under 35 years old. You can see the average is about 38% under 35 years old historically. The yellow line is 35 to 44 years old, and that rate is 62% of home ownership. The difference between those two numbers is unbelievably large. The difference between under 35 and 35 to 44, you're talking about half of the people that don't own homes at 35 will own homes at 44. That's incredible. These are incredibly powerful numbers to understand home ownership and what drives the foundational demand inside our industry. And so median first-time home buyer right now, 34 years old. And that number has been like 32 to 34 years old for the last 30 years. And it hasn't changed. You'd think it would continue going up. It hasn't changed a whole lot. It's gone up a little bit, but not a whole lot. 34 years old is the median first-time home buyer right now. And so this is a demographic analysis from the U.S. Census Bureau of from the 2020 census for the age strata of our country. Right there in 2020, that represents 31-year-olds. If you go slightly below that, the broader this chart goes, the more people there are. So you've got 30, those are 34-year-olds today because they were 31 in 2020. The next 2 years, that number continues going up. There's a lot. If you look, even 34-year-olds this year is a larger demographic than we've seen historically in our country ever. This is the largest amount of 34-year-olds we've ever seen in our country right now. And for the next few years, we'll continue to be at or above where we are today. Let me show you the same data in a different chart. So that arrow represents 34-year-olds this year. When you go to the left, that's 33-year-olds, 32-year-olds, 31-year-olds, 30-year-olds, etc. And so we are in a really strong place. I want to drive this point home. I'm going to zoom in on the chart. You don't even need to know the data. You don't even know what it relates to. This is just total number of people in age demographics. 2005, those were 34-year-olds right there in 2005. 2005 was the height of the buying frenzy, the height of demand in this last real estate cycle, right? That's 2008. What happened between 2005 and 2008 for the structural demand in the real estate cycle? It went down substantially. This chart would indicate just by the demographics, the age, the number of 34-year-olds could have shown you that was going to happen. So then what happened since? This is 2023, 34-year-olds in 2023. That's that bar. And we've seen a steady increase. We had about 4 years of low demand and then a steady increase of demand all the way until this year. And that has been absolutely true in the market. This is month supply. Even with interest rates almost tripling over the last 18 months, supply continues to be extremely low, 2.9%. Historically, that is below the historical average of 4%, 4.5%. And you can see back in 2008 and 9, supply got up to about 12 months of supply total on the market. Okay, stick with me here. We're gonna get crazy for a minute. I'm gonna flip this chart upside down. I'm gonna put it right on top of these years line up exactly. I'm stacking this on top of 34-year-olds in our country demographically, and it tracks exactly just like the way South America fits in beautifully with Africa, back to Pangean days before plate tectonics moved things apart. These charts are married together. The total months of supply is directly correlative to the total number of 34-year-olds we have in our country. So here's the good news. When we look at this chart, this right here is your opportunity. This is the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years of 34-year-olds entering prime home ownership age and demand that is going to prop the real estate industry, residential real estate industry up. We have some headwinds ahead. We know that. We've already faced them, and we will continue to face them. And yet the underlying demand for real estate in the economy is never stronger than it is right now and for the next 5 years. So this is great news for your job security over the next 5 years. We have to dig in and get through this and have some hard conversations and coach people well through the headwinds that are in front of us. And yet on the other side of these headwinds will be the biggest boom in real estate that we have ever experienced because of the demand that we have right now, the pent-up demand that's getting squeezed as people are not able to purchase currently, that will be in the near future. And so I'm going to leave you with one more bold law: fear or faith, you choose. The reality is you can take this news and say, doesn't apply to me. It doesn't, I don't think that this is accurate, or you can have faith to move forward, have hard conversations, dig in, work harder than you've ever worked, and then reap the rewards of having a business that is unlike anything you've ever imagined it being on the other side of this. You can do it, and the market is going to work in your favor moving forward. So thanks for letting me talk through this stuff. Thanks, Michael.
Awesome. Thanks so much, man. That's awesome. And I want to just briefly touch on this because we're seeing a pretty substantial dip in like, okay, now from the marketing side of things, we're seeing a pretty substantial dip over the last 40 days of inbound leads, primarily because of interest rates on different placements. Like on Facebook, we're seeing less leads. On Google, we're seeing less leads. We have a bunch of teams that are participating in other third-party lead generation programs like Zillow Flex and the Premier programs and OpCity. We're seeing the exact same thing there. And if you actually look at the correlation between like this year and being 40% down year over year, we're about 40% down on leads year over year. And so there's a lot of buyers in that 34 to 40-year-old age demographic that are, just think about the platforms that all of those users have. And all of them are on. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram, they're on TikTok now, they're on YouTube, they're on Google. Obviously, everybody's on Google, but you get the idea. And so you have this major drop in lead flow. But here's what's going to happen. And I know that all of you guys are wonderful and you talk to your clients about this, but we just need to be really making sure that we're doubling down on these conversations with the interest rates. What's going to happen? There's going to be a lot of millennial demographics right now, like those 34-year-olds that have a little bit of money, but they're just waiting for the interest rates to come down. As soon as the interest rate comes down, it's going to be the exact same thing that happened during COVID when the interest rate came down to generate economic turnover. It's going to be a buying frenzy again. And so here's what I encourage everybody to do when they're thinking about their lead flow and everybody's going, they're kind of puckering up a little bit. Keep your lead gen on and as strong as you can possibly feed that machine to stack up leads. Now, you might be getting less leads, but keep stacking up the leads, because in an economic downturn, this is your ability. And this is what gets me really excited. This is your ability to stack up and grab more market share when a bunch of other people are dropping out of a lot of other lead programs and generating contacts. You just need to keep building your database. That's so important right now. And so that's something that we're talking through with a lot of, whether it's agents or teams or brokerages. I know we have kind of a mashup here on this call, and it's really, really important. Like, hey, maybe it's a little pucker worthy right now with what we're seeing, but it's going to be really exciting when we're looking out like 6, 8, 12, 18 months from now, if you continue to grab up the market share that everybody else is losing because they decided to turn off the machine, if that makes sense. So
totally. And to piggyback on that, Michael, I think that any drop in production right now is all that's doing is delaying and compressing next year's demand, because we should, according to the demographics of our country, we should be higher amount of transactions this year than last year. And we know that won't be true. We know that. And it's down, 30, 40%, depending on your market. And those buyers don't just go away. They just move forward and get compressed into the next year or the next year. And so the structural demand that we have in our market from a demographic standpoint will end up buying homes. Absolutely. Like, the statistics are very clear on that. The historical trends are very clear on that. It just, they will compress into the future if they're not doing it right now. And so it will cause even a higher demand than is structurally normal next year if interest rates ease, right? So I think that there is such a wave of production that is coming on the other side of this. And the sooner we can get to this recession, into and through this recession, you will see a real estate demand and the amount of activity happening like we have never seen before. And I'll say this, 2021, into 2022 was an artificially created wave of real estate production. We likely will never see that again, but we will see this sustained 5-6 years of super strong activity like we have never seen before. So that's what we're looking forward to. And I think now is the time to get in shape for it, just like what you're talking about. Get good at the conversations, bolster our relationships with people, and take market share. And then once it hits, then you're in shape for it while everyone else is just trying to get back onto the bike.
Yeah, exactly. And so as that correlates to all of you individual agents that are listening to this, you guys have probably gotten a lot of leads over the last probably, 4 or 5, even 6 months that you've talked to, and they're just not ready to buy yet. Right. Like I guarantee, and everybody's like, these leads suck. Right. No, they don't. Trust me. Keep nurturing those people, keep calling them back and just checking in and be in a relationship. I know that this is an overpreached thing, but there's a reason it's an overpreached thing in real estate. You guys have heard over and over and over again that real estate is a relationship-based business. It is absolutely a relationship-based business. You have to continue to build and maintain, emphasis on maintain the relationships that you have with these leads. These aren't just paychecks, guys. These are real people that want to have real conversations with other real people that are providing them value in an expert way. And people are coming to you looking at everybody as an expert. And so you need to be having real conversations with people and continue to maintain the relationship. And so that's actually a really great segue into what I want to go over with you, Chris. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I'm going to hand it back over to you, Michael.
Thanks so much, man. And Chris, if you don't mind, just right before you bounce, can you just bring up the bold law that you started with one more time?
Yes. Give me just a second. Let's see here. It is your business grows to the extent that you do is the bold law that we started with.
Yep.
And that is absolutely like, we gotta be getting in shape right now for our businesses to grow in this market and beyond this market. And so,
and emphasis on creating a plan, right? Emphasis on creating a plan. And so that's what I want to talk to everybody about today.
sweet.
And this is literally going to be the difference between a $10,000 or $100,000 paycheck, a $20,000 or $250,000 paycheck. And this really just boils down to understanding the very, very rudimentary formula to success in sales. Every single person on this call, we are business people. We're real estate agents. We are in the business of sales, realistically, right? Like that's what this is. And there's really good business owners and there's really bad business owners. But the principle of moving your business forward, and especially a down market, is going to blow down to some really rudimentary formulas that we're going to talk about today. So this all starts with understanding the difference between, and by the way, guys, I was very proud of myself with how this flows out. It's cheeky, but it's really powerful when you get it. It's understanding the difference between setting no goals, and setting no goals. All right. What we're going to do is we're going to start by talking about setting no goals. Again, cheeky and obvious, but setting no goals gets you nowhere 100% of the time. Well, maybe you'll get a little, you'll get up the road a bit, but when you're completely lost in your business and you don't have any goals as far as where you want to be in your business in the next 6 months, it doesn't even need to be in the next 6 months. It could be in the next 3 months, but you need to be setting, obviously, goals. So setting no goals gets you nowhere. So what should we do instead? Well, obviously, we need to set goals. It boils down to choosing the one thing. It's the one thing that we really want right now, and we need to make it a goal. We're going to write it down here in just a minute. So I'm going to forewarn everybody, like, I want everybody to get out a pen and a pencil or open up a notepad on your phone or on your computer or desktop or something. In just a second, we're going to pick a goal. And I want to talk about a little just how we're ultimately picking goals. You need to be really specific. Don't be picking something like, I want to make 6 figures. Instead, you need to be saying, I want my goal to be to make $150,000 in the next 12 months. Or maybe I want to make $950,000 in the next 12 months. Either are okay, but there's a big difference between setting one goal versus the other, right? There's a big gap in between there. And everybody bear with me here, because towards the back of this, as we get a little bit further down, we're going to really break this down into a very easy to understand, very formulaic process using real numbers from 2022 as far as where you can be at in your business if you just do certain things. So the first thing we need to do, set a goal, be specific, and then we're going to pick Pick that goal and write it down. You do not have to choose a money goal initially. I've had this conversation several times just over the last few weeks. You don't have to choose a monetary goal. But in almost every single situation, money is going to be involved in setting that goal. So you need to set a goal and then look at the amount of money that it costs as your actual goal. Because again, we are business people. Businesses are transactional. We capitalize on certain things. That means transactional businesses make money. So if we're going to be good business people, we need to be setting actual financial goals. The initial goal doesn't have to be money, but I think you guys get where I'm going. The goal ultimately is probably going to end up being money. And I've even talked to people about like, okay, well, I just want to be able to spend more time with my family. Well, guess what, guys? If you want to be able to spend more time with your family, you need time to be able to spend more time with your family, and time costs money. All right. We need to be able to make more money to offset. And that might be a pendulum from time to time as far as where you're spending time, whether it's with your family or if it's generating the revenue that we need in order to spend time with our family and still be stable. So it might look something kind of like this. I want to take my family on a sailboat cruise to 7 Greek islands. That's actually my goal by the end of this year, which we've already hit, and I'm super excited. A couple of my team members hit that as well. We say, okay, great. That's awesome. That sailboat cruise costs $28,000 for the charter, and it's going to cost about $6,000 for the flights and the food. Sweet. Hopefully I did my math right. $34,000 is the goal. It might look something like, I want to take my spouse to a fancy restaurant 4 times a month. Awesome. That costs $300 a meal with drinks and an Uber because we don't drink and drive. And the babysitter costs $100 for the night. That goal is an extra $1,600 a month. So you guys follow along here. Set a goal. Doesn't need to be a financial goal, like at least a hard set monetary goal. If you're thinking about, you're ideating about what your goal actually wants to be, it's going to boil down to money. You need to see what that actually costs and do that. So write down your goal. This is probably the most important part of the goal setting process, not writing it down. Like that is, yes, that is important, but you need to share that with your spouse. If you don't have a spouse or a partner, you need to share that with a friend. If it's not a friend, you need to share that with a colleague to find alignment. And that's really key, and hold you accountable to that goal. And this is something that I want every single person that is watching this to be doing this weekend. You need to find alignment with your spouse. How many of you guys, or your partner, or your friend, or your colleague, whoever you're talking to this about your goals with, how many of you guys have talked with a really good friend or your wife or your husband or your partner and said, I really want to do this thing, and they thought it was a terrible idea? What was the likelihood that you were actually going to be able to do that thing and accomplish the thing that you talked to your partner about? Probably pretty low. So if you don't find alignment and you don't get agreement from your spouse or your significant other, it's really unlikely that you're actually going to accomplish that goal. So write it down, talk to somebody about it, get an agreement, find the alignment, and have them hold you accountable to that goal. You talk with them and say, hey, if I do this thing, would you hold me accountable? And would you allow me the time, if you agree that this is a worthy and noble goal, would you allow me the time and the things that I need to do in order to accomplish that goal? Now you're getting the buy-in from them. It's going to make it way easier for you to actually get the thing done. So my goal is, you guys take some time. We're going to think about it. I want it all done this weekend. I'm going to have conversations with everybody in our next team meetings about what their goals were, who they talked to about it, and if there was agreement on those goals. And I'm really excited to have those conversations, and we are going to have those conversations. It's going to be a little bit of homework, but this is going to be pivotal to your success in real estate, especially over the next few months with what we need to do, because we have to work 3 times as hard right now in order to get the same number of transactions we were getting a year ago. All right. Next up, setting no goals. There is a great book by Robert Fenton or Richard Fenton. I can't remember. It's called Go for No. I highly encourage everybody to get it on Audible. If you guys drop me a chat in the Q&A, or you just drop me a direct message and you want to read that book, I will buy that book for you on Audible, and I will gift it to you. Setting no goals. In a very rudimentary caveman way, More no equal more yes. And the doors of opportunity, this is one of my favorite quotes, one of my favorite quotes of all time. The doors of opportunity open to those who knock. The more doors you knock, the more opportunity you will have. Now, it seems obvious, but in other words, the more doors you knock, the more no's you get. The more no's you get, the more yeses you get. In our company, all of our ISAs, we actually have a no award. It's called the no award. Like, you get no award, again, tongue in cheek, but we have a no award every single time, without fail. The employees in our company, the agents in our market centers, the team leaders, when it comes to recruiting, it's all the same. The ones that get the most no's are always the ones that get the most yeses. How many of you guys don't like rejection? I know I personally don't. Well, a while ago, especially when I was young in my sales career, I hated rejection. I really wanted to get the sale, man. And I didn't like getting told no. It didn't feel good. It's really changed my mindset, understanding the no principle and just being able to say, hey, I got 4 no's today. That gets me this much closer to my yes. And we're going to talk about what that actually looks like in a very formulaic way here in just a second. So the more no's you get, the more yeses you get. Get excited about your no's. All right. Once we're excited about our no's, we just need to increase the rate at which we get rejected. The faster we get rejected, the faster we get rich. Again, get excited when you get a no. All right. Last thing, know your no's. If it's tracked, if it's measurable, now we're on the right track. If we don't know how many conversations we had, how many no's we got, then that's not a great place to be in our business, because we can't predict where we are going to be in our business next week, next month, next quarter, next year, next 5 years. And that's really important when we're talking about, like, guys, Chris just talked to us about some, what he would say 2.1 or 201, kind of formulaic, again, science, quantifiable science and math on what happens in the market and real estate. We have to be able to understand what that looks like and what that means for our business. But it has to start by simply tracking the people that told us no. That's the most basic way to start tracking what's happening in your business. If you're not tracking that, it's pretty unlikely that you're going to be able to track and understand much else when it comes to complex economic models. So we have to know our no goals and understand the number of no's we need to get in order to hit our goal. So it boils down to reporting. You guys all have CRMs. You have the High IQ CRM. You have Command. You have Boomtown, Follow Up Boss. You guys have Sync. There's a whole bunch of different CRMs out there. It's really easy to drag and drop stuff into a bucket and mark your nose and get excited about it. So story time really quick. Most of you guys already know this about me, but I grew up in sales and in real estate, and it doesn't matter what I was doing. I was a door knocker. In fact, I was a door knocker for 11 years. And the last 4 years that I was door knocking, I was building a pretty sizable sales team. And we recruited over 480 people into that sales team, primarily a bunch of college age people. And we would door knock, and it was 6 months of pain for 6 months of pleasure. It was a summer door knocking program. So we'd go out and we'd bust ass for 6 months, make a whole bunch of money, then come back and take 6 months off. And it was a great program. The way that we would explain this to the guys that were coming into the program was this exact principle. And by the way, these guys were selling $99 products with, their security systems, $47 a month. We were selling contracts for like 3 to 5 years for the security system package. And these guys door knocking, selling those kind of product, were making multiple 6 figures a year. And the way that we would explain this to them is, if you just understand this one principle, you'll make a bunch of money. If you are the worst, this is what it is. If you are the worst salesperson on the planet and you just go and talk to 100 people, you will talk to somebody who will buy your product just because they were thinking about doing it anyway. And that is especially true for real estate. And we're going to talk about those numbers in the next slide. So understand that if you're the worst salesperson on the planet and you talk to 100 people, you're going to talk to somebody who just wanted to buy your product anyway. So simply put, here's the promise. Go talk to more people and you'll make more sales. It's that easy. So how does that correlate in real estate? Let's put this into perspective. In 2022, there were just shy of, but about 250 million people in the US over the age of 18. And you guys were just listening to Chris talk about that 34-year-old, 32 to 34-year-old demographic, right? So 250 million people in the US over the age of 18. Last year, there were 5.95 million homes sold. We're just going to round up. We're going to say 6 million homes sold last year. That means that 1 out of 41 people over the age of 18 sold their home last year. If you guys just talked to only 25 people a day, 5 days a week, 125 people a week, everybody get this, right? 4th grade was the best 3 years of my life. I'm not very good at math. Hopefully this tracks. But 25 people a day, 5 days a week. You're going to talk to 125 people a week. That means that you would talk to 3 people a week on average who just wanted to sell their home anyway this year. That's 12 people a month that you're going to talk to if you just pick up the phone and you call 25 people a day. That's not a lot of phone time, guys. 25 people a day. Doesn't have to be over the phone. You can door knock. You can go out, stand in front of a grocery store. There's lots of ways to do this, right? What we're doing on our side is we're digitally door knocking, which is fun, right? A little less work. Okay. But if you talk to 3 people a week, that's 12 people a month that you're going to talk to. Excuse me. If you talk to 125 people a week, you're going to talk to 3 people a week who wanted to sell their home. That's 12 people a month who will have wanted to sell their home anyway. So let's assume that you're below average at sales, like really below average. The average sales guy, if you take into account like all demographics, all sorts of different types of businesses, the average salesperson sells about 1 out of 3 people, about 33% of sit-down conversations. One out of 3, about 33. But let's assume that we're not quite there yet in our sales acumen. We haven't really scaled that up in our business acumen yet, and we only get a 10% capture rate. 1 out of 10 people, not 1 out of 3, 1 out of 10 people. But guys, that's 1.2 sales a month on average that will happen if we just talk to 25 people a day. That means that on average, if you talk to 25 people a day, just 5 days a week, normal working days, how long does it take you to talk to 25 people? Maybe 2 hours. Let's say 3 hours. You guys would make an additional 14 sales a year just by some really basic, very rudimentary math based on real numbers that have happened in the real estate industry right now over the last year. It's an additional 14 sales a year by just talking to 25 people a day and by getting 499 no's. So here's how I want everybody to think about this. You guys start talking to people. Sweet. Heather Jacobson, one of my favorite people in the world. She had a quarter jar and she'd bring it in and she'd put it up on her desk and she'd call and call and call. And she would go get a couple rolls of quarters, put it in the quarter jar. And there was an empty one. And every time she would make a call, she'd pick up a quarter and she'd put it into the other jar. And her goal was, I am not leaving the office until I have all of my quarters moved from this jar into that jar. But if she got a yes, she would dump all the quarters back into the jar and she would restart. And so this was a bit of a game that she played with herself to help her get through her numbers. But what she was doing was every time she put a quarter in the quarter jar, that was getting her 1 step closer to the yes. It was getting a no. Every time she put a quarter in the quarter jar, she got a no, and then another no. And sweet, I guarantee you guys, if you have 499 conversations with people, you're going to sell a house. You're going to find somebody that wants to buy a house. Trust me. And I will pay a sizable amount of money to anybody that actually does this and proves me wrong, because you're not going to prove me wrong. The goal is to go for no's and get excited about the no's, because that's getting you that much closer to the yes. So I'll leave you with one last stat from Michael Ward, the director of Teamridge at KWRI. We talked with him. We've been talking with him many, many times over just the last month and what the market's doing and what we're expecting to see a lot of agents do or not do. Right now, so far, 92% of agents have closed 4 or less transactions so far this year. And we think that that's just going to continue to be the main for the last, that's going to be the stat for the last quarter here. We don't see that changing. 92% of agents have closed 4 or less transactions so far this year. The top 8% are doing everything else. Guess why? Because they're getting through the numbers that they need to get through in order to get the yeses that they're going to get by getting through the no's. Again, guys, it is simple. This is the most rudimentary aspect of sales acumen, and in our business, what do we need to do in order to get the yes? So the moral of the story, find time to talk to more people, get more no's. And by the way, another great way to look at a no is a not yet. Decide right now that we're going to hit the goal that we wrote down, and we're not going to settle for crumbs. I love and adore all of you way too much to allow you to settle for crumbs in your business. You guys have to get through the numbers. It will not happen unless you change your mindset on working the numbers the way that they need to get worked. You guys have tons of leads in your sales hoppers. You're continuing to generate those pipelines. Go back through them. You need to be calling people. You need to be talking with them. Go ask them out for coffee. Just build a relationship. It doesn't need to be commission breath, right? You don't just need to look at them as a paycheck. I said that earlier. That's not what they are. They're real people. They're looking for real relationships, and they're going to choose you because you built a relationship. Why? Because we already know that real estate is a relationship-based business. So find more time to talk to more people, get more no's, decide right now that we're going to hit our goals. We're not going to settle for crumbs, because it doesn't matter what kind of market it is. There are millionaires and billionaires made in up markets and down markets. You can look at that historically. In fact, some of the best businesses have been built in recessions. So don't let the recession and all the economic models that Chris was talking about, don't let that have you discouraged. Get really excited about that. See the opportunity, because guess what? There are a bunch, the majority, in fact, 92% of other agents that are going, oh my God, what am I going to do? They're going to blame the market. You guys can't be those people. You can't be those agents. Get excited about the no's. All right, everyone, that is it for me. I'm super excited. We've got some really cool stuff coming up. We're going to be talking next month. We have our leadership meeting coming up as well. You guys will get texts and emails for that. I definitely want to see all the leaders on that meeting to go over some more economic models as it pertains to the actual market scenarios and teams. So everyone, thank you so much. I really appreciate all of your time today. And we will be talking with you all very soon. See ya.